Paul Newman has been making movies for more than a quarter of a century. One of his finest performances is his newest, The Verdict. I got a stack of stills from some of his most famous films, and handing them to him one at a time, I asked him to look at the picture and tell me whatever came to his mind about that performance.
Paul Newman revealed the 9 worst racist actors he hated in old Hollywood Golden Age history. For over 50 years, Paul Newman wasn't just one of Hollywood's biggest stars. He was one of its bravest voices. While most actors stayed silent, Newman marched alongside Martin Luther King Jr. at the 1963 March on Washington. He traveled to Gadsden, Alabama for desegregation drives. He narrated civil rights documentaries and used his fame to fight for equality at a time when doing so could destroy a career. Richard Nixon considered him such a threat that he placed Newman on his official enemies list. Newman later called that the greatest honor of his life. But fighting for civil rights meant Newman saw the other side of Hollywood too. He worked alongside legends whose public images hid private prejudices that shaped the entire industry. He witnessed firsthand the actors who fought integration, enforced segregation, and used their power to keep Hollywood white. Most shocking was a 3-time Academy Award-winning actor who reportedly danced with joy when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, and a cowboy icon who told a national magazine he believed in white supremacy and never apologized for a single word. These weren't just celebrities with outdated language or uncomfortable jokes from a different era. These were powerful men whose prejudices had real consequences. They blocked opportunities, destroyed careers, and built an industry where generations of Americans grew up seeing a version of Hollywood where people of color simply didn't exist. But first, the name that begins this list might surprise you, because his racism hid behind a mask of patriotism and Hollywood sophistication. Starting with number 9, Robert Taylor, the handsome face hiding an ugly agenda. In the golden age of Hollywood, few leading men looked the part quite like Robert Taylor. With his dark hair, chiseled features, and effortless screen presence, Taylor was one of MGM's most bankable stars throughout the 1940s and 1950s. Audiences saw a romantic leading man, a movie star in every sense of the word. What those audiences never saw was how Taylor used his influence to wage war against anyone in Hollywood who believed in racial equality. When the House Un-American Activities Committee began hunting for supposed communists in Hollywood, most actors dreaded being called to testify. Robert Taylor didn't wait to be called. He volunteered. He walked into those hearings eagerly and named colleagues he suspected of being sympathetic to progressive and civil rights causes, destroying careers without a moment of hesitation. Taylor became a founding member of the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, an organization that worked to suppress progressive voices in Hollywood, including those fighting for racial integration. He actively lobbied his own studio to fire writers he considered too sympathetic to civil rights causes. In Taylor's world, supporting equality for Black Americans wasn't progressive. It was suspicious and un-American. Newman represented everything Taylor despised, a progressive actor who used his platform to fight for civil rights rather than crush them. Taylor volunteered to destroy careers, but he wasn't the only Golden Age star who turned anti-communism into a personal weapon against anyone who dared support racial equality. Number 8. Adolphe Menjou, the man who weaponized patriotism. In 1947, actor Adolphe Menjou stood before the House Un-American Activities Committee and made a boast that revealed everything about who he really was. He declared publicly that he was the most informed person in America on the subject of communism. It was a claim that said far more about his prejudices than his knowledge. Menjou had built a respectable career as a sophisticated character actor throughout Hollywood's golden age. His polished appearance and continental charm made him a favorite for roles requiring elegance and authority. But off-screen, Menjou channeled that same energy into becoming one of Hollywood's most aggressive crusaders against civil rights, all under the convenient disguise of fighting communism. His definition of communist activity expanded to include anyone who supported racial integration, equal treatment of minorities in Hollywood, or basic civil rights for Black Americans. In Menjou's twisted logic, believing that Black actors deserved equal opportunities was evidence of communist sympathies. He was instrumental in blacklisting artists whose only real crime was believing in racial equality. Writers, directors, and actors saw their careers destroyed because Menjou and men like him decided that supporting civil rights was the same as betraying America. Newman saw right through it. He understood that actors like Menju wrapped their racism in the American flag and called it patriotism. They didn't hate communism, they hated change. They hated the idea that the industry they controlled might one day have to treat everyone equally. Menju and Taylor used politics as their weapon. But the next name on this list didn't need politics to hide behind. He carried darker allegiances that connected him to something far more disturbing. Number 7. Errol Flynn, the swashbuckler with sinister allegiances. On screen, Errol Flynn was everything audiences wanted in a leading man. He was Robin Hood. He was Captain Blood. He was the most dashing and charming adventure star Hollywood had ever produced. Women wanted him, and men wanted to be him. His smile could light up a theater, and his sword fights thrilled millions. But behind that legendary charm, Flynn harbored allegiances that would have destroyed any career if the public had known the full truth. Throughout his career, Flynn was dogged by credible accusations of Nazi sympathies that went far beyond casual politics. Reports placed him in Nazi Germany and Fascist Spain during the Civil War, not as a journalist or concerned observer, but as someone who sympathized with what he saw. Biographers who investigated Flynn's private life documented disturbing connections to Nazi operatives and deeply held racist views toward Black and Jewish people. His private writings and recorded conversations revealed a man who viewed the world through a rigid racial hierarchy. Rooted in his upbringing in colonial Tasmania, Flynn saw non-white people as fundamentally inferior. On set, colleagues documented his casual use of racial slurs and his open contempt for working alongside minority performers. He carried these attitudes with the same effortless ease he carried a sword on screen, as if racism were simply part of being a gentleman of his era. Flynn represented the kind of old Hollywood royalty that Newman's generation was determined to move past. Men whose charm and good looks made their hatred completely invisible to the audiences who adored them. Flynn's racism hid behind adventure and a movie star smile, but the next name on this list might be the most surprising so far, because he was called the King of Hollywood, and his racist affiliations have been buried for decades. Number 6. Clark Gable, the king with a segregated court. When Paul Newman arrived in Hollywood in the early 1950s, one name still towered above everyone else in the industry: Clark Gable, the King of Hollywood, the man who played Rhett Butler, the actor whose on-screen presence defined what a leading man was supposed to be for an entire generation. Gable's star power was unmatched, and his influence over the industry was enormous. What history has largely buried is how Gable used that influence. He was a founding member of the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, standing alongside Walt Disney, John Wayne, and other powerful conservative figures in Hollywood. This wasn't a casual membership or a name on a letterhead. The Motion Picture Alliance actively worked to suppress progressive voices in the industry, opposed integration efforts, and used its considerable influence to blacklist anyone who challenged the racial power structure that kept Hollywood overwhelmingly white. Gable aligned himself with the most reactionary forces in the entertainment world. While he played charming heroes on screen, characters audiences loved and rooted for, behind closed doors he supported the very systems designed to keep Hollywood segregated. His opposition to progressive movements within the industry was well documented among his contemporaries, even if the public never heard about it. Newman came up in an industry that Gable's generation had carefully constructed, an industry designed from the ground up to exclude. The king's crown was built on a foundation of keeping others out, and his legacy carries that weight whether audiences want to acknowledge it or not. Gable helped build the system from the inside. But the next name on this list didn't just participate in Hollywood's racism quietly. He put his views on the record in a national magazine interview so disturbing that it still shocks readers today. Number 5. Robert Mitchum, the tough guy who denied history itself. Of everyone on this list, Robert Mitchum is the one who actually shared a screen with Paul Newman. They appeared together in the 1964 comedy What a Way to Go, working side by side during a period when Newman was actively involved in the civil rights movement. On screen, Mitchum projected toughness and cool indifference. His heavy-lidded eyes and deep voice made him one of the most iconic tough guys in cinema history. Off-screen, he harbored views that wouldn't fully surface for another 2 decades. In 1983, Mitchum sat down for an interview with Esquire magazine that exposed attitudes he had apparently carried for years. When asked about the 6 million Jewish people who died in the Holocaust, Mitchum responded with words that denied one of history's greatest atrocities. He made anti-Semitic remarks throughout the interview, and expressed racist views that shocked even the interviewer. When the public backlash hit, Mitchum offered what many consider one of Hollywood's weakest excuses. He claimed he had been in character from a recent film role during the entire interview. His written apology called the whole situation a tragedy of errors and insisted the reporter had misunderstood him. Esquire never retracted a single word of the article. Earlier in his career, Mitchum had turned down a starring role in The Defiant Ones, the groundbreaking film about racial tension. His stated reason was that he didn't believe a black man and white man would ever be chained together in the segregated South. Some colleagues interpreted this as an unwillingness to share equal screen time with Sidney Poitier. While Newman was marching on Washington and putting his career at risk for civil rights, Mitchum was harboring views that would eventually make national headlines. Their shared screen time in 1964 is a reminder that in Golden Age Hollywood, a civil rights hero could be standing right next to someone who denied the Holocaust, and nobody in the audience would ever know. Before we continue with the final names on this list, it's worth pausing to understand exactly who Paul Newman was when it came to civil rights, because his commitment wasn't casual or convenient. In August 1963, Newman boarded a plane to Washington, D.C., alongside Marlon Brando, Sidney Poitier, and Harry Belafonte. He stood in that massive crowd and listened to Dr. King's dream. But Newman didn't stop there. He traveled to Gadsden, Alabama for dangerous desegregation drives. He narrated documentaries about the civil rights movement when doing so made him a target. He supported candidates who fought for equality and donated to organizations working to dismantle segregation. Richard Nixon placed him on his enemies list. Newman wore that like a badge of honor for the rest of his life. While the men on this list were fighting to keep Hollywood and America white, Newman was putting everything on the line to change it. But even Newman couldn't have prepared himself for the three men who topped this list. Men whose racism wasn't just personal prejudice, it was an entire way of life. Number 4. Ward Bond, Hollywood's most vicious enforcer. What happens when the biggest bully in Hollywood becomes the gatekeeper of an entire industry? You get Ward Bond, a character actor who appeared in dozens of films. Bond is remembered today mostly for his work in westerns and his roles in John Ford pictures. But inside the industry, Bond was known for something far more destructive than any character he ever played. He was Hollywood's enforcer. Bond was a founding member of the Motion Picture Alliance, and he took that role personally. He was known as a vicious bully who used intimidation and threats to pressure actors, writers, and directors into naming names during the blacklist era. If you supported civil rights, if you believed in racial equality, if you showed any sympathy for integration, Ward Bond would label you a communist and work to destroy your career. And he had the connections to do it. His close friendship with John Wayne and director John Ford gave him access to Hollywood's most powerful circles, and he used that access like a weapon. Colleagues documented his open use of racial slurs on set, delivered loudly and without shame. He refused to treat minority crew members with basic human dignity. He ran aggressive campaigns against anyone who dared challenge the racial hierarchy that kept Hollywood segregated. Bond didn't just hold racist views privately like some names on this list, he weaponized them. He turned his position in Hollywood's power structure into a tool for enforcing white supremacy across the entire industry, one destroyed career at a time. Newman's progressive generation had to fight through men like Bond just to exist in Hollywood. Bond was the wall standing between the industry's racist past and its slowly integrating future. Bond was the enforcer who kept the machine running. But the next man on this list didn't need enforcers or backroom politics. He said exactly what he believed to a national magazine and never apologized for a single word. Number 3. John Wayne, the cowboy who believed in white supremacy. In 1971, at the absolute peak of his fame, John Wayne sat down with Playboy magazine and said something that should have ended his career overnight. He stated plainly, "I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility." Those weren't words taken out of context. They weren't misquoted or exaggerated. He said them deliberately to a national publication with millions of readers. In the same interview, he defended the taking of Native American land, saying indigenous people were selfishly trying to keep it for themselves. He dismissed diversity in Hollywood casting and made clear that he saw no reason to change the racial makeup of the industry he dominated. What makes Wayne's case so revealing isn't just what he said, it's what happened afterward. Nothing. His career continued without interruption. He remained one of the biggest box office draws in the world. The industry's complete silence in response to openly stated white supremacist beliefs told you everything about what Hollywood truly valued. Wayne actively campaigned against hiring black actors in leading roles and used his enormous influence to enforce those preferences. When he directed The Alamo in 1960, he rejected Sidney Poitier for a role despite Poitier being the era's biggest black star. He refused to work with black directors throughout his entire career. At the 1973 Academy Awards, when Marlon Brando sent Sachin Littlefeather to the stage to protest Hollywood's treatment of Native Americans, Wayne was furious. Security reportedly had to physically restrain him from confronting her on stage. His rage at Native American advocacy revealed the depth of his convictions. Letters Wayne wrote throughout his life, now archived at USC, show his racial views remained consistent until his death in 1979. He never recanted a single statement, never issued an apology, never showed a moment of regret. Newman and Wayne existed in the same Hollywood but represented opposite poles of what a movie star could be. Newman marched for civil rights. Wayne openly opposed them. Newman supported integration. Wayne enforced segregation. They were the two faces of Golden Age Hollywood, and the industry rewarded them both. Wayne said it out loud, and the industry let him keep his crown. But there's one final name on this list, and what puts him at the very top isn't just what he believed. It's what he did when he heard the news that Martin Luther King Jr. had been shot. Number 1. Walter Brennan, the beloved grandfather who danced when King died. 3 Academy Awards. 3. Walter Brennan remains the only actor in history to win 3 Best Supporting Actor Oscars. On screen, audiences knew him as the lovable, folksy grandfather figure, the kind-hearted old-timer with a warm smile and a gentle voice. His portrayal of Grandpa Amos McCoy on The Real McCoys made him one of the most beloved television personalities in America. Families invited him into their living rooms every week, trusting that warmth was real. It wasn't. Behind that carefully constructed image was a man whose hatred ran so deep it defined every aspect of his private life. Brennan was a committed member of the John Birch Society, one of America's most notorious far-right organizations. He endorsed segregationist George Wallace for president in 1968 because he believed Richard Nixon was too liberal. In 1972, he backed far-right candidate John Schmitz, a fellow Birch Society member. Brennan didn't just attend meetings. He actively spread propaganda. He recorded tracks at a John Birch Society convention where he spoke in character as his beloved Grandpa Amos, using that trusted voice to tell attendees that the civil rights movement was a communist conspiracy, that African Americans were being manipulated by outside agitators with an anti-American agenda. He weaponized the character America loved to sell hatred to people who trusted him. His show's own producer, Sheldon Leonard, publicly called him the racist Walter Brennan, and deliberately distanced himself from working with him. Writers who worked on his shows documented his constant use of racial slurs on set and his vocal belief in the mental superiority of white people. He once stated publicly that the 1965 Watts riots could have been stopped with a machine gun. He was so extreme in his views that he genuinely believed John Wayne was a communist. That's how far-right Walter Brennan stood. But the story that defines Brennan's legacy more than any other happened in April 1968. When news reached Hollywood that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated, the nation mourned. People wept in the streets. The entertainment industry fell silent in grief. Walter Brennan danced. Multiple crew members from the set of The Guns of Will Sonnet reported that when the news broke, Brennan didn't just express satisfaction. He physically danced a jig and cackled with delight. The man America knew as a lovable grandfather literally celebrated the murder of the civil rights movement's greatest leader. He reportedly had the same reaction months later when Robert F. Kennedy was killed. The contrast with Paul Newman could not be more absolute. Newman narrated civil rights documentaries and marched alongside Dr. King. He put his career and his safety on the line for equality. Brennan danced when King died. That single contrast tells you everything about the two Americas that existed inside Hollywood's golden age. These 9 men weren't simply products of a less enlightened time. They were powerful figures who made deliberate choices to exclude, diminish, and harm. They used their influence to enforce segregation, destroy careers, and build an industry where people of color were invisible unless they were servants or stereotypes. Paul Newman saw all of it from the inside, and instead of staying silent like so many of his peers, he chose to fight. He marched when marching was dangerous. He spoke up when silence was safer. He proved that you could be one of the biggest stars in Hollywood history without surrendering your principles. These 9 men proved that many of his peers chose a very different path. If you found this journey through Hollywood's hidden history valuable, subscribe for more untold stories from entertainment's complicated past. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.